A lifeless child. Two parents in uniform. Behind the walls of their military home, a tragedy so unthinkable that it shook the entire community to its core. Tonight, we uncover the story of the Army couple accused of starving their own daughter to death. What went wrong behind closed doors? And how did no one see the warning signs until it was too late? It began in a quiet neighborhood reserved for military families. Rows of identical houses stood in neat formation, representing order, discipline, and sacrifice. To anyone driving by, it was the picture of American stability soldiers returning home, children playing in the yards, and families gathering at community events. But behind the closed doors of one of these homes, something was terribly wrong. Neighbors rarely suspected it. In fact, they often described the couple living there as private, reserved, and sometimes even distant. No one could have predicted the horrifying discovery that was about to come. The parents at the center of this story were both Army service members. On the surface, their lives appeared structured and disciplined. They wore their uniforms with pride, represented their country, and fulfilled their duties like any other soldier. They met during their service years, quickly formed a bond, and later started a family. To many, they seemed like an ordinary military couple, balancing the pressures of work and home life. But what the outside world never saw was the tension building within those walls. Reports would later reveal that beneath their polished appearance was a relationship marked by secrecy, neglect, and control. And in the middle of it all, a child was suffering silently. Their daughter was just a little girl, young, innocent, and full of potential. She should have been surrounded by love, laughter, and safety. Instead, she became the silent victim of her parents' choices. To her teachers, she appeared quiet and withdrawn. To neighbors, she was rarely seen outside. She lived a life hidden from the community around her. As time passed, her health began to deteriorate. Her small frame grew thinner. Her energy faded. And yet, no one outside that home truly knew the extent of what she was enduring. She was a child crying out for help without words, because the very people meant to protect her were the ones causing her pain. The truth finally came to light one tragic day when authorities were called to the home. Inside, officers found a scene that would haunt them forever. Their daughter's frail body told the story of prolonged suffering. It was clear, this was not a sudden tragedy. This was the result of months, if not years, of neglect and starvation. The couple, dressed in their uniforms just hours before, were now standing as suspects in a crime that defied comprehension. To the investigators, the question was immediate: how could two people who swore an oath to protect and serve their country fail in the most basic duty to protect their own child? News of the discovery spread quickly through the military base and into the local community. Shock turned to anger. Fellow service members were horrified, unable to reconcile the image of disciplined soldiers with the reality of accused child abusers. Neighbors who once waved politely from across the street now replayed every small detail in their minds. Could they have seen the signs? Should they have spoken up sooner? The military community, known for unity and support, was now divided, torn between disbelief, outrage, and grief for the little girl whose life had been cut tragically short. She entered the world with innocence, like every child, eyes wide with curiosity, eager to explore, and in need of nothing more than love and protection. In her early years, neighbors sometimes remembered seeing her play outside. She was shy, often clinging to her mother's side. She wasn't the loudest child, nor the most outgoing, but her presence carried a quiet sweetness. But over time, those small glimpses of childhood joy began to fade. The laughter grew less frequent. The sightings became rare. And slowly, the little girl's world seemed to shrink, confined to the walls of a house that should have been her sanctuary. Children have a way of showing their emotions, even without words. Teachers noticed her withdrawing in class. Her energy wasn't the same. Sometimes, she came to school looking tired, her clothes wrinkled, her frame smaller than before. She rarely spoke up, and when she did, it was often in a whisper. A teacher might ask, "Did you have breakfast this morning?" And she would just look down at her desk, silent. At home, things were worse. She was often denied meals. The kitchen, filled with food her parents themselves consumed, became a forbidden place for her. The fridge was locked. Cupboards were off limits. Her hunger grew into desperation. And yet, she bore it quietly, because who could she turn to? The very people meant to nurture her were the ones causing her suffering. In hindsight, the warning signs were everywhere. Neighbors wondered why they rarely saw her outside. Teachers noticed her weight dropping. Family friends questioned why she never smiled in photos. But in many tragic cases like this, each individual piece seems too small on its own. It's only when the puzzle is complete that the truth becomes undeniable. Had someone connected the dots sooner, her story might have had a different ending. But the silence continued, and the abuse deepened. As her condition worsened, her small frame became fragile. Her eyes, once bright, dulled with exhaustion. Hunger consumed her. Some reports suggested she was isolated for long periods. Meals withheld as punishment. Days blending into nights. Her little body growing weaker with each passing moment. What must have gone through her mind in those final days? Did she wonder why her parents treated her this way? Did she hope someone, anyone, would notice and save her? Her silence became her only voice, and her suffering reached its devastating conclusion when her young life ended inside that house. When the truth finally emerged, the community felt not only grief, but guilt. Teachers, neighbors, fellow soldiers, all of them asked themselves the same question: could I have done more? The victim's story became a painful reminder that abuse often hides in plain sight. Children may smile in public, while behind closed doors they're enduring unthinkable cruelty. Her life was short, but her story would spark outrage, sorrow, and a desperate call for justice. The discovery of a lifeless child inside a home belonging to an army couple shocked the community. But for investigators, this was just the beginning. How did this happen? What really went on inside those walls? And most importantly, who was responsible? The investigation would soon reveal the terrifying truth about a household where silence and fear reigned. When first responders arrived, the atmosphere inside the house was unsettling. The parents claimed the child had simply collapsed, a medical emergency, nothing more. But officers noticed inconsistencies. The room was strangely tidy, almost staged. There was no sense of urgency from the parents. No frantic attempts at CPR. No genuine panic. Instead, investigators saw calmness, and a disturbing coldness. The truth began to emerge in the autopsy room. The medical examiner quickly noted signs of severe malnutrition. Her body weight was alarmingly low for her age. Her bones showed signs of weakness, her stomach nearly empty. These findings told a story of prolonged suffering, not a sudden collapse. Bruises and marks on her body hinted at physical abuse, suggesting she had not only been starved, but also punished. The official cause of death: homicide by neglect and starvation. Detectives turned to the parents for answers. Both were members of the military, respected in their community. On the outside, they projected discipline, order, and success. But behind closed doors, their own child was living a nightmare. In interviews, the couple's statements often contradicted each other. The father claimed the girl was a picky eater. The mother suggested she had a medical condition. But investigators quickly learned that no such diagnosis existed. As days passed, their explanations began to crumble. The most damning evidence came not from the couple, but from those around them. Teachers spoke of a little girl who often came to school hungry, scavenging leftover snacks. Neighbors reported they hadn't seen her outside in months. Friends of the family noticed she was excluded from outings, left at home while her siblings enjoyed normal childhood activities. One neighbor recalled hearing faint cries late at night, followed by silence. Bit by bit, these testimonies painted a chilling picture. This was not an accident. This was systematic cruelty. Inside the home, investigators uncovered shocking details. Food was plentiful, but carefully locked away. Snacks and meals were clearly accessible to the adults, but not to the victim. Phone records revealed troubling messages between the parents, describing punishments and restrictions. One text hinted at deliberately withholding meals as discipline. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same horrifying truth: the child's death was not neglect by accident, it was intentional abuse. After weeks of gathering evidence, investigators made their move. The army couple was arrested and charged with murder, child abuse, and neglect. Their once proud reputations as disciplined service members crumbled in an instant. The community was outraged. How could two people sworn to protect their country fail to protect their own child? How could such cruelty happen in a household built on discipline and order? These questions would now move into the courtroom, where prosecutors sought justice for a little girl who had no voice. But the investigation was only the beginning. What followed was a trial that exposed every chilling detail: defense arguments, shocking testimonies, and emotional breakdowns that left the courtroom in tears. The arrest of the army couple sent shockwaves through the community. But now, the truth would have to be laid bare in a courtroom. Every secret, every detail of their daughter's suffering, would be exposed in front of a judge, a jury, and the world. The trial would become a battle of narratives. Were these parents cold-blooded abusers, or simply overwhelmed caregivers caught in tragedy? The answer would determine their fate. The prosecution wasted no time. In opening statements, they described the victim as a little girl who was deliberately starved, locked away, and treated as less than human inside her own home. They called on teachers, neighbors, and family friends, each recounting disturbing details. A teacher testified how the girl begged for extra food at school lunches. A neighbor described months of silence, saying, "It was as if she had disappeared." A doctor presented autopsy evidence, severe malnutrition, dehydration, and bruises consistent with abuse. Every testimony added weight to the picture of deliberate cruelty. The jury listened in stunned silence. The defense, however, tried to shift the narrative. They claimed the girl had a medical disorder. They suggested the parents were strict but not abusive. At one point, the defense even argued that the couple's military background made them overly disciplined, but not criminally negligent. But the prosecution dismantled these claims one by one. No medical records supported the disorder theory. Witnesses testified that food was locked away. And text messages between the parents revealed a chilling attitude toward their daughter, messages that no loving parent could explain away. There were moments in the trial that left the courtroom in tears. When photos of the child's condition were shown, even jurors visibly struggled to hold their composure. The stark images of her frail body revealed the truth in ways words never could. One investigator broke down on the stand, recalling how he found food stocked in the pantry, cookies, snacks, and meals, all while the little girl wasted away just a room away. The most emotional moment came when a teacher, holding back tears, recalled the child's last day at school, when she hugged her tightly before leaving for the weekend, never to return. When the parents took the stand, their demeanor shocked many. The father remained stone-faced, often deflecting blame onto his wife. The mother, in contrast, sobbed uncontrollably, though prosecutors argued her tears were not for her daughter, but for herself. Under cross-examination, contradictions piled up. Their attempts to explain away the text messages, the hidden food, and the child's condition only deepened the jury's doubts. The image of a once-respected Army couple crumbled under the weight of evidence. In their final statements, the prosecution was clear: this was not neglect. This was torture. They reminded the jury of every witness, every message, every image. They asked for justice, not only for a child whose life was stolen, but for a community that trusted these parents. The defense made one last attempt, painting the couple as flawed but not murderous. But the weight of the evidence was undeniable. The courtroom fell silent as the jury returned. After hours of deliberation, the foreperson read the verdicts aloud, guilty on all major counts, including murder and child abuse. The mother sobbed into her hands. The father sat frozen, expressionless. For the first time in months, the victim's surviving relatives felt a sense of justice. But no verdict could bring back the little girl whose life had been stolen. Asterisk. As the couple was led away in handcuffs, one question lingered: how could two people, entrusted with protecting their country, fail so tragically to protect their own child? This trial wasn't just about one family, it was a reminder of the dangers of silence, the importance of speaking up, and the cost of ignoring the warning signs of abuse. And while justice was served in a courtroom, the scars left behind will never fully heal. The verdict had been delivered. The Army couple was found guilty. But while the trial may have ended, the story of this little girl, and the shockwaves it sent through her family, the military, and the public, was far from over. In the days after the sentencing, the courtroom was flooded with emotions. Relatives expressed a mix of relief and sorrow, knowing justice had been served but a child was still gone. Journalists covering the case described it as one of the most disturbing crimes they had ever reported. And the community, who once looked up to the couple as a disciplined Army family, was left shaken. Outside the courthouse, protesters held signs demanding stricter protections for children. The public outcry grew louder. This case wasn't just about one family, it was about accountability. Like many high-profile cases, the defense filed appeals. They argued trial errors, mishandling of evidence, and even claimed media bias tainted the jury. But appellate judges reviewed the case carefully, and time again, they upheld the original verdict. Each failed appeal deepened the couple's fate, years, if not life, behind bars. The military community could not ignore the case. These were two soldiers, trained to serve and protect, now convicted of harming their own child. The Army launched internal reviews, questioning how such a tragedy could happen in a family under their care. Some called for mental health screenings, stronger support for military families, and better oversight of soldiers' home lives. It sparked debates far beyond one courtroom. Could the stresses of military life contribute to family tragedies? Or was this simply an unthinkable crime, committed by individuals who betrayed their duty both as parents and as soldiers? For the child's surviving relatives, the journey was far from over. Grandparents, siblings, and extended family members were left carrying the burden of grief. Many struggled with guilt, wondering if they could have seen the warning sign sooner, if they could have stepped in. Some turned their pain into action, advocating for child protection laws and speaking out about the dangers of silence. Others chose to mourn privately, never speaking publicly again. The shadow of this case lingered in every family gathering, every unspoken memory. Asterisk. Asterisk, this case became more than just a headline. It became a cautionary tale. True crime forums, documentaries, and social media discussions dissected every detail. Parents everywhere asked themselves, could this happen in my neighborhood? Teachers reflected on their role as first responders to signs of abuse. It raised awareness of how easily warning signs can be missed, and how speaking up can save a life. Asterisk. Some argued that justice had been served. Others believed no sentence could ever balance the scales for a lost child. But one truth remained: her story had forced people to confront uncomfortable realities about abuse, neglect, and the hidden struggles within families that seem perfect on the outside. Asterisk, at its heart, this tragedy was about a little girl who never got the chance to grow up. Her story reminds us that behind every smile, every picture-perfect family, there may be secrets. Secrets that, if ignored, can end in devastation. By remembering her, by telling her story, we honor her life, and we remind ourselves to listen, to speak out, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Asterisk, this concludes our multi-part deep dive into the Army couple case. If you found this story impactful, subscribe to Dark Truth Dispatch, because every week, we uncover the hidden stories, the shocking betrayals, and the dark truths that shape our world. And remember, sometimes, the scariest stories aren't fiction, they're real. Asterisk.